Well, welcome, Jennifer, to Running Strong Mind Body Connection podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Now, Jennifer, we've just been friends for a little while, but how exciting to be able to share our stories together and collaborate this. And what's most exciting for me is to share this with my guests. And so, welcome to my podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you, Karen. It's so great to be here.
Yeah. So, just for insightfulness for who listens to this, can you just like tell people who you are, a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I have been working in the healthcare field for 33 years, and my specialty now is helping people who are experiencing movement challenges, which may also be causing pain, maybe not, maybe. But I help them to move better and overcome obstacles, including pain, by rewiring the brain. By rewiring the brain.
As and people who listen to this know that I'm a ultra runner. So a lot of people that I've had on this podcast, yeah, most of these people I've had on the podcast have ran 100 miles or more. And so this is would be a great place because, as runners, we get into pain in our bodies and injuries or out of alignment or whatever. I've had broken bones here and there, and I had IT band issues. And but what would you kind of enlighten us on the moving challenges and how could that benefit um, these listeners who are athletes?
Right. And I was an athlete too. I still consider myself one. I was a competitive athlete from the age of 7 to 17 doing gymnastics.
Wow.
And I had many injuries, broken bones. My shoulder was subluxed several times. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I found a movement specialist who could help me. And and so that and you know, what was great was that she made my shoulder feel better after one session. And the most exciting part for me was that movement was so fluid and easy. It's like it wasn't hard for me to move before my session, but right afterwards, I had just moved to Seattle and I was down at the waterfront and I walked half a mile uphill. It was, pretty steep hill floating. It was just super easy. That it was like I felt no cardio workout, not much. It was because my muscles were working efficiently. My skeleton was so well organized that it was working just enough and orchestrating together to make that movement easy. And so I love teaching people that regardless of whether they're in pain. I love working with athletes, musicians. And, the moral to the story really is prevention.
Right.
Right. So the sooner you start this, I wish I had known about this work during when I was a gymnast. It
Right.
would have been amazing.
That's one thing in life, though. We never know where we're going to land. And it's just our journey, our path of where we are, where we get to, so where we are today. So, can you dive into that a little bit and how do you help people who are in pain? What is that all about?
It's about teaching them how to slow down and pay attention to themselves. And my process is called the Feldenkrais method, created by Dr. Feldenkrais back in the early 1900s. The name isn't that important. Some people have heard of it and are loving it. And it's a process of doing slow, gentle movements that you're moving from a developmental aspect to begin with, just like relearning how to move like a baby would. We go back to the early phases, we call them lessons, not exercises, and do some gentle movements, exploring ourselves, guided by the teacher. The lessons are strategically written by Dr. Feldenkrais. And through the process, we're just freeing up and integrating the mind and the body, training the subconscious how to move, giving it options. And our brain wants us to be safe. Our brain wants us to feel good.
Right.
It's tuning in, it's seeing what doesn't work well. It's sensing what works better. And that's being recreated in our brain. If we've lost that connection with how to move well. So one way to think about it is if you're hiking through a forest for the very first time, there's a lot of brush in the way and trees and not a clear path. And then the more that people practice these lessons, the more that path becomes clear. And then the more you're able to find that pathway to smooth movement. And as you're using your entire body, that's when the pain can go away.
Sure. So I have a friend who's had a back issue for many, many, many years, and it creates a pain in his um, hamstring when he runs, and then he runs through it. So would somebody like that benefit from what you do?
Definitely, definitely. One of the things I notice is that people have a different concept of their core and some of the strategies of athletic trainers and people in that industry is different from my approach. Not everybody, but the way I look at it is your core is from your pubic bone up to your throat. It's not just your abs or in that area down at your center of gravity. It's the whole core. Sometimes people aren't using that
Sure.
correctly or as efficiently as they could. So that would be often the first place I start. I teach about the feet, really getting in connection with how you are supporting yourself through your skeleton. And once you find that skeletal support, like I was saying earlier, the muscles just work so much more efficiently. The work is distributed through your body. The forces are moving out of your body rather than building up in certain areas that might cause damage. I don't know if that
Fascinating.
answer your question.
Yeah, and what comes to mind for me though too is um and it's so related to the mind body connection. So what comes to mind for me is that sometimes we get an injury and we focus on that injury and we create this negative thought process going on. I'm in pain. I'm not getting through this. I can't do this. I don't know how to, on and on and on. And it is associated with the subconscious because even if you're aware you're saying those words to yourself, but way back deep back in your brain is, I'm not getting better. So when we tell ourselves, I'm not getting better, is exactly what you're going to manifest.
Exactly. I know that's what I love about what you do. You're so in tune with that, and it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
was telling somebody that the other day. They were just constantly, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I'm like, of course it's not, because you're telling yourself it's not. And
right.
so, how important that is as we get older, as we want to continue being runners, as we want to continue being athletes, even a gymnast, anybody in any field, it's important we have the mental capacity to thrive and recover.
That's exactly it. Yes. And I teach a weekly class, and I'm constantly reminding my students to explore with curiosity, not judgment.
Sure.
Not judgment, like, oh, I can't do that, or oh, I can't do this as good on this side as that side. No, just step back. It's different. Be curious about it. And hey, why not step back? Let's match the side that's not quite as easy rather than trying to force ourselves into the bigger movement on the other side. Let's slow down. Let's go into that small movement on the other side and match that. Give the brain a feeling of symmetry. Often that's such a huge release, and the body opens up to more possibilities and more comfort and ease.
Exactly. Because,
Allowing yourself to slow down and go smaller.
right. Because when you do, isn't it, I mean, besides the opening of the brain, just the release in the body.
The release in the body, yes. And as you were saying, with the manifesting of what you're thinking about, as you know, as you back off from repeating those thoughts and shift the thoughts into, oh, this is possible, and what is the possibility?
Hmm.
And
So is your weekly class, is that online or is it in person? How do you do that? What is that about?
The majority of my work is online these days. I teach a online Zoom class. It's a, movement class that I used to teach in a clinic before COVID.
Right.
And during the lockdown, we went to the online, obviously Zoom was available. And when the world opened up again, my students didn't want to come back to doing them in the clinic. They wanted to stay home, not have to drive, not have to look for parking. And then after class, when they're all relaxed and integrated and their posture is all better, they don't want to go get in the car and drive home. So I do that, and I've created 2 programs as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how can so to explain that to us, how would that benefit the people who listen to this podcast and um yeah, how would that benefit them? In what way?
Courses. My
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think it's great for anybody, whether you're an athlete or not. But since you are asking me specifically about the athletes, coming in and learning how to move again can point out things that just weren't quite clear in your mind. And there is some visualization that takes place. We use visualization just like an athlete uses to, prep for performance.
Sure.
Um, and just being able to discover, oh, that part of my body really wasn't on my radar. And hey, welcome, there's my ribs. They can move this way. I had no idea. And then suddenly the whole body's moving differently. I have one student who has said to me several times, she says, no matter what's aching today, whatever lesson I do, I feel better.
That's pretty cool.
Which is why I like to recommend classes too, because there can be surprises.
Yeah.
It's not like my neck hurts and I need to go work on my neck. Oh, I went in and did a class moving my ankles and my neck doesn't hurt anymore. It can be totally surprising.
That is super surprising. And that's one thing I know, just we can be so focused on our body, on keeping it healthy, keeping it strong, keep running because we got to do the miles for this particular race or whatever, but we don't do that overall maintenance, that overall well-being, the overall of the body, because eventually as we get older, something's going to break down because you can't just keep run, 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 run. You got to do, and I really love your comment about the core of the whole, from the neck to what you said to
Pubic bone, right. Well, the pelvic
yeah,
floor.
your tailbone pretty much, all the way
Don't
down
forget
there.
the ribs. Don't forget this whole part, the whole upper part of your torso, still the core.
So it's sort of funny in my life because I did everything backwards. I got into the weightlifting, which actually benefited me when I decided to get into the running and biking. Where a lot of people get into the running and they're like, man, I need to build up my upper body. I need to build up my core. I need to build up to make that strong because in all reality, when we're out there pounding, this whole from the base of our spine, our hips, all the way up to our head carries that whole body forward. And those 2 little feet down there getting the impound of all that weight.
Yes, exactly. And you want that impact on those feet to go, that force to travel up, out through the head.
Right.
And yes, strength is great. We obviously strength and staying strong. The weightlifting is fine, and then remembering that mobility is just as important as strength and stability. There's that interplay between all three.
Right.
So for instance, if you hold your core tight right now, notice how that affects your breathing. And you can think if you're walking or running with a tight core all the time, or wherever, standing, sitting with your core tight the whole time, how that's affecting your breath. And I'm getting tired. I've been holding my core while I've been talking to you. I'll let that go and feel my butt.
Can you teach that right here? And how would somebody keep their core tight? Maybe even as they're walking, what would you focus on? What would you tell someone they focus on?
I would tell someone not to keep their core tight. Instead, we would find support through the feet and then all the bones stack one on top of the other.
True.
Yeah, so yeah, let's do a little bit. Do you want to stand up?
Sure.
Okay.
People were standing.
Standing. We're listening or watching, we're standing.
Listen to Jennifer.
I'm standing. I'm not going to show my feet. I'm just going to talk you through it. So your feet are going to be flat on the floor without your shoes. If you're in your shoes, that's fine. And they're about hip width apart. And just notice, are you standing more on the front or the back of your feet or centered? More on the outer or inner edge of your feet or centered. So that's the principle of just bringing your awareness to yourself. And then tighten your core and notice what happens when you tighten your core. Does your pressure on your feet change? And then release it. And then let's just do some movements of going forward and back, not very far, not to where you're feeling your core tighten. So if I'm going way to the edge of my toes, my core is going to over tighten. I feel like I'm going to lose my balance. If I go way back on my feet, there's a point where I lose my form and I have to tighten to not fall. So don't go that far. Just stay within a smooth range, forward and back. And then stop and just notice where you land there. Do you feel a little bit different support? This isn't always obvious to people. Do you notice a different support, Karen?
Yeah, I think I do. I feel it actually. I'm going to, yeah. I I feel it. My foot felt more centered in the ground
Afterwards.
afterwards.
Mhm.
So, um, I've done this exercise with somebody else, and it's really being aware of being centered, and you can go as far forward as possible with not falling. And it's kind of exactly what you said. It was having that awareness of the being grounded
Right.
to the earth. And so what you just did is exactly what I do in essence in my mental fitness boot camp. And so people learn how to do, and I call it a PQ rep, but it's just also what you were doing was being in the present and paying attention to your body. You had to bring total awareness just to your feet.
Right.
And so what we're doing there is getting out of our head and being present in that moment. And how hard is that? It's not hard.
Yeah, and that was just a short example. If we had kept going, we could have tightened our core again and noticed how perhaps that flexibility through the
Right.
ankles was not as fluid. We could have gone into circles and really gotten familiar with our feet. And what happens when you're doing that is your brain, the map in your brain.
Right.
We have our body is represented in our brain. There's pictures of that human.
Right.
So we're remapping, we're highlighting that for our body and brain to learn.
Right. And doesn't it take practice? I mean, you do it once, it doesn't, it's good, but you got to do it, a few times and doing it over and over. And that's, I think that, and you hold your weekly classes, and it's the same idea is that if you just do this one time, you're not really changing the journey, maybe that moment and the next day, but not the whole journey. And it's a process. It's a journey in life where you keep doing this stuff to keep your mind, your body, and remapping that brain. And
It's a lifestyle. I've been doing this since 95.
yeah.
In 97 and I graduated in 2000, and I do it all the time.
That's cool. I mean, that's good too.
Just as far as the philosophy and how to think about yourself.
Yep.
I do lessons every week, and my students, many of them have been with me for 16 years since I started teaching in Washington.
Oh, wow.
So,
Good
yeah.
for you. That's awesome. And has that grown for you well and changing people's lives?
Well,
That's
it's so
cool.
exciting now. I have people, coming from France and South Africa and
The beauty of COVID.
via Zoom, and you have a program coming up too.
Right, I do. I do a workshop, Unleash Your Inner Champion. So it's the same, different modalities we do, because mind is about the mind and the negative stuff that goes on, and those are the thoughts that create that injury in our body, that creates that dis-ease in our body. And how do we shift that? You brought up a good point of people taking that judgment and bringing curiosity into that. Exactly what, because that judgment is our inner critic, and then how hard we are on ourselves mentally. Because like we were talking about earlier, is like we keep telling ourselves that story. I'm broken. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. My leg is this. My back is this. And so we keep manifesting that same injury. We keep manifesting that same thought and the same impact on our bodies. And so when we become aware of that and we can shift that, so my language for that is setting into the stage powers. And one of them is being curious. And it's to me, it's that looking back when we were little, weren't kids curious? When you were doing gymnastics, weren't you just playful? And, at 7 years old, you know what? Oh, you can get up on the bar. I can do this on the floor or whatever. I mean, you're fearless,
Right, right.
absolutely fearless. So as adults, we don't bring that into ourselves anymore. We're not fearless. We're not curious. So be curious.
So I love it. So you guide people in a different direction. You guide them into the curiosity and
Right, 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 right.
use of the fear.
Yeah.
That's great.
So do you have what do you have coming up?
In the beginning of April this year, 2025, I am doing a free 5 day challenge. It's just a short program of it's called Healthy Joints, Free to Move.
Cool.
Yeah,
Do you
so
have a link to that that I can you can say here, or I can put it in the show notes too?
I can do that.
I'll put it on I'll put it on the show notes. So uh, email it to me. Emailed me the link to that, and I'll put that in there.
Okay, I'll do that for sure.
That's a great way to start up the spring.
Exactly, and
What's the age of the people that you work with?
anywhere from, let's see, I did have, so great. I had some high school students. He was a musician with scoliosis, and he wanted to work on helping himself stand with comfort while he played his trumpet. It was so much fun. Up to 90 years old.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I do record my class so people who work can, do it the next day on Saturday or whenever they have their day off.
Right.
I'm teaching on a Friday. The majority of my students are in the retirement age.
Cool.
Yeah,
That is so important as we age. It is super important to move, to keep our bodies agile. More often than not, when people retire and they stop, they're sitting around a lot. And that's where, quite a few years down the road, people trip, their bones are brittle. And
yeah,
so it's imperative that we move. We're not meant to sit.
that's right. That's right. And if we start doing the movements that I teach early on, the bones will be healthier because you'll be walking in alignment. That's one of the best things for
Sure.
the osteoporosis prevention.
Yep.
They recommend the vibratory movements. We're
Yeah.
doing that with our body aligned.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's what a great thing. I mean, that's especially in, I'm going to say especially in women, but that's not true. Men can get osteoporosis too. It's just not as common. We
exactly.
don't hear about it as much. But I know as a cyclist, I was doing mega, mega miles, and there were guys that were getting osteoporosis because cycling does not build your bones. It's not a weight-bearing exercise.
Right, right.
And so cycling and swimming are not weight-bearing exercises. And you don't have to be a runner. You don't have to flip on a bar to be a gymnast, but it's great to be standing up, moving around in your house, doing the exercises that you're teaching your people, and because that's going to keep you stronger. And then if you incorporate the walking and people walk, just walk around your block,
Right.
just walk around. And for that, there's a 98-year-old neighbor I have who's turning 99 in March that walks every single day.
Fantastic. Your work is so important with the mindset for aging gracefully, you know?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And we don't want to we you don't want to go into aging or even to retirement being beating yourself up because I have seen people who have been so sabotaged by their inner critic and just angry in life, then retire and 5 years later they've passed away. And
Hmm.
it's not, a life is beautiful. Keep it going.
What kind of audience is drawn to your upcoming webinar, the next course that you teach? What kind of audience do you?
So I do have athletes. I do have leaders and entrepreneurs. So the athletes that I talk about though aren't the professionals. We're amateurs. You know, I have my cowboys who do rodeos. I have lawyers and doctors and a professional in life, accountants, finance, in all area of life. These are people who go out there and are stressed at work and then they go run just to relieve the stress. But that only lasts for, I mean, I did have somebody when I was doing my market research. Yeah, I go run. It takes me about an hour to get out of my stress. And then I enjoy my run. And then another client of mine was saying her and her running buddies, oh, they're complaining the whole time about life. I mean, how horrible is that? You know?
Bring the people down that you're with as well?
So it's just change the thoughts in the world. Let's change the energy in the world. Let's bring curiosity into our worlds. Let's keep our bodies healthy. Let's keep our minds healthy. And let's keep when we have a healthy mind, we that energy transfers to other people as well.
Exactly.
Because when we're in that negative mindset, that transfers to other people as well. And
Hmm.
so there's enough stress in the world. Let's just turn it around.
And you know, it's amazing. I'll go to a training for some of the modalities I do, and I leave feeling so grounded and centered. And I'll go back into the world, and it radiates to the people that I'm with. It's magical. It's just,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If you walk around, I challenge everybody to walk around with a smile on your face. Smile at everybody you see, because when you do that, you start feeling better inside. It's
yeah,
amazing how that, and I remember that because when I was working, I would go run at lunchtime just to get out of the office. And, there's a lot of homeless people, especially around the winter time that were in the area. And I made a point to smile. And then you just feel good about yourself because when you give, you receive as well.
I'll accept your challenge. I
I
will.
challenge everybody who listens to that to do that for a minimum of one day.
Uh-huh. I
To
love
get
it.
out of the house, every place you go, you got to smile at somebody.
Maybe even say hello.
Maybe say hello. Yeah, that's a good idea. And another thing is be grateful.
Go ahead.
I said another thing is to be grateful.
Yes.
Gratitude is the ultimate source of receivership.
Hmm.
Feel that.
Yes, I agree.
Jennifer, I'm super stoked to have you on my podcast. And I know you have other modalities, and one of them you mentioned was NLP. I'm curious though if you would want to come back and explore that
That would be great. And I would love to learn
because,
about you. I'm enjoying the relationship we're building, and
yeah.
that's so inspiring to me running 100 miles. Well, you want to be the oldest person running 100 miles, right? Isn't that what you told me?
That is what I told you. And I am just beyond excited. And I can't say that I'm not a little bit scared. That scared is a energetic scared. I was accepted to run the Cocodona 250-mile run this year.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to
Congratulations.
do a 250-mile run in May.
Amazing.
So, talk about mind-body connection. Talk about what Jennifer has to offer for people who even do that stuff, who get out there and are broken. So, I'm going to pass your name on to a friend of mine who's been complaining about his back for so long, and I did mention to him about his mindset. But he might enjoy what you may have to offer, may help him. So I
Right.
will
Like
be
a great,
happy to pass his name along. Pardon?
like a great combination.
Right. Well, thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome, Karen. Thank you.
Thank
Lovely.
you for your time and so grateful of what you shared with my guests. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and I'll be sharing. I'll be making sure that my community knows about you too, because you have such a great positive outlook on life and so much value to share.
Thank you so much. And we will have you back in maybe another month, and we can talk about other modalities that you have.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.